Sarah thought marrying into money meant security forever. She convinced my husband to put our family business in her name for tax purposes, then filed for divorce and tried to steal everything we built in 30 years. She forgot one thing, though. I'm the one who taught her husband everything he knows about business, and I still had friends she'd never even heard of. Before I tell you what happened, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love connecting with people from all over the world. My name is Margaret Chen, and at 52 years old, I watched my stepson bring home the woman who would try to destroy our family. David was my late husband's son from his first marriage. When Robert died, David inherited half the family restaurant chain we built together, and I kept the other half. We were partners, family, and for 20 years after his father passed, we grew those 5 restaurants into 15 locations across 3 cities. Then Sarah walked into our lives like a hurricane in designer heels. She was 28, blonde, and spoke with this sweet voice that made everything sound like a question. David was completely smitten. Within 6 months, they were engaged. Within 8 months, they were married in a ceremony that costs more than most people's houses. I paid for half of it because David asked, and because I loved him like my own son. Sarah seemed nice enough at first. She'd smile at family dinners, ask me about recipes, even helped serve customers during busy weekends. But I started noticing things, little things. The way she'd correct David in front of employees, how she'd suggest changes to the business without understanding why we did things certain ways, the questions about our finances that felt too specific, too calculated. Then came the meeting I'll never forget. David called me on a Tuesday morning and asked if I could come to his house. He sounded nervous, which was unusual because David never got nervous about business. When I arrived, Sarah was sitting at their kitchen island with papers spread out like she was conducting a board meeting. David looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his wedding ring. Sarah said without even greeting me, "We need to talk about restructuring the business." I sat down slowly, already sensing trouble. What kind of restructuring? She slid a folder across the marble countertop. Inside were legal documents, all professionally prepared, all official-looking. Our accountant says we're paying too much in taxes. If we transfer your shares to me, we can reorganize as a different type of corporation and save thousands every year. I stared at the papers. Transfer my shares to her? The restaurants I'd spent 30 years building, the legacy Robert and I created together, the business I'd grown from 5 employees to over 200? Why do you specifically? Because I have a business degree from Northwestern, she said, like that explained everything. And because married couples get better tax advantages. David finally spoke up. It would just be temporary, Margaret. Just on paper. You'd still run everything the same way. I looked at my stepson, this man I'd helped raise, and saw a stranger. David, honey, why don't you and I discuss this privately first? Sarah's voice got sharp. Actually, I think it's better if we keep everything transparent. No side conversations, no family politics. This is just business. That's when I knew. This wasn't about taxes. This was about control. And Sarah had spent months positioning herself to take everything. I closed the folder and stood up. I need time to review this with my attorney. How much time? As much time as I need. That night, I called my lawyer, Patricia Wong. She'd handled our business affairs for 15 years and knew every detail of our corporate structure. When I described the meeting and faxed her the documents, she called me back within 2 hours. Margaret, don't sign anything. These documents would transfer complete ownership to Sarah, not just create a tax shelter. Once your shares are in her name, you'd have no legal claim to the business. My heart sank. But David said it was temporary. There's nothing temporary about these contracts. If you sign this, you're giving away everything. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about Sarah's smile, the way she'd called it just business, how she'd shut down any private conversation with David. This was planned, calculated, and I had almost walked right into it. The next morning, David called again. Have you decided about the restructuring? I've decided to keep things exactly as they are. Long pause. Sarah's not going to be happy about that. Then Sarah should have married someone who owns a business instead of trying to steal mine. He hung up. 3 days later, I got served with divorce papers. Not David's divorce papers, my divorce papers, from a husband I didn't know I was married to, claiming I'd entered into a common law marriage with someone named Thomas Chen. Complete fabrication, but it was Sarah's first move to try to claim spousal rights to my assets. I called Patricia immediately. "This is harassment," she said, "but it means they're getting desperate." Then came the real blow. 2 weeks later, David filed a lawsuit claiming I had mismanaged the business and demanding an audit of all financial records going back 10 years. The legal papers cited irregularities in accounting practices and unauthorized expenditures. Every single accusation was something Sarah had learned during those family dinners when I trusted her with business details. But Sarah made one crucial mistake. She assumed I was just David's stepmother, that I didn't have my own connections, my own power, my own resources. She thought I was some widow who got lucky when Robert married me. She had no idea who she was dealing with. See, before I married Robert, I spent 12 years as a commercial real estate broker. I knew every major property owner in the city. I'd helped dozens of restaurant owners find locations, negotiate leases, structure deals. While Sarah was in college learning theory, I was in the field building relationships that lasted decades. Time to make some calls. My first call went to Marcus Rivera, who owned the shopping center where our most profitable location operated. Sarah didn't know that Marcus and I dated briefly before I met Robert, and we'd stayed friends for 25 years. "Marcus, I need a favor. David's wife is trying to steal my business. When their lease comes up for renewal next month, I need you to triple the rent. Consider it done. What else do you need?" Next, I called Elena Vasquez, who supplied fresh produce to 8 of our locations. Elena's daughter had worked for us every summer through high school, and I'd written her college recommendation letters. "Elena, I need you to put David's restaurants on cash-only delivery. No more credit terms. Effective immediately." Then I called James Park, our insurance broker. His company had handled our policies since we opened, and I'd referred dozens of clients to him over the years. "James, I need you to audit the safety protocols at David's locations. Very thoroughly. I'll have inspectors there Monday morning." Each call was strategic, calculated, and completely legal. I wasn't breaking any rules. I was simply exercising relationships Sarah never knew existed. Within 2 weeks, David's locations were facing tripled rent, cash flow problems from supplier changes, and insurance complications that would take months to resolve. But I wasn't done. I scheduled a meeting with David, but not at his house where Sarah could control the conversation. At our lawyer's office, with witnesses, everything recorded. David walked in looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Margaret, what's happening? Our suppliers are cutting us off, the insurance company is threatening to drop us, and Marcus wants to triple our rent." I sat across from him at the conference table, hands folded. That's what happens when you try to steal from family. "I'm not trying to steal anything. Then why did you file a lawsuit questioning my financial management? Why did you serve me with fake divorce papers? Why did you let your wife manipulate you into thinking you could take my life's work?" He looked down at his hands. "Sarah said you'd never give up control willingly. She said you were holding me back." "David, I helped you grow this business from 5 restaurants to 15. I've never held you back from anything. But I won't let anyone, not even you, steal what your father and I built together." That's when he broke down. Started crying right there in the lawyer's office. "I don't know what to do, Margaret. Sarah says if I don't get full control of the business, she'll leave me." I reached across the table and touched his hand. "Honey, if your wife is threatening to leave you because you won't steal from your family, what does that tell you about your wife?" Patricia slid a document across the table. "David, this is a settlement offer. You drop all legal action against Margaret, and she'll sell you 2 additional restaurant locations at fair market value. But the ownership structure stays exactly as it is." He stared at the papers. "What if Sarah won't accept this?" "Then Sarah can explain to a judge why she tried to fraud a widow out of her deceased husband's business." He signed the papers that day. But Sarah wasn't finished. When David came home with the settlement agreement, she went nuclear, called me screaming, threatened to destroy my reputation, said she would make sure I never worked in this city again. I let her vent. Then I said quietly, "Sarah, you should probably start looking for a new place to live." What's that supposed to mean? It means the house David lives in, I co-signed that mortgage. And when someone tries to defraud me, I have every right to protect my financial interests. The line went dead. See, Sarah had done her homework on the restaurants, but she'd never bothered to check the personal assets. That beautiful house she'd been redecorating, I was on the mortgage as a co-signer because David's credit wasn't strong enough 2 years ago when they bought it. One phone call to the bank about concerns regarding fraudulent activity was all it took to trigger a full financial review. Within a month, David and Sarah were required to either refinance in their names only or sell the house.